All right, in this video, I'm going to give you a brief sort of synopsis of a presentation that I did at a conference on growth mindset in the language classroom, because this has to do directly with a couple of concepts we're talking about this week in class, the effective filter and I+1. But first, let's talk about what do I mean by the growth mindset and why I think it's pivotal for creating a positive classroom culture in your classes. Carol Dweck sort of says there's two types of mindsets. Okay, there's a fixed mindset and a growth mindset. And of course, like anything, it's not purely binary. We can all be subject to a fixed mindset on certain things or at certain times, where we have a growth mindset with other things and at other times. There's a fluctuation. But in basic terms, the fixed mindset is really just saying that people are ingrained in believing that they're only good at certain things. When things get too hard, they sort of say, that's just not for me, I'm not going to try, it's not my thing. They don't like to push themselves, they don't want to be challenged. Anytime someone corrects them, they take it really personally. If it's something that they don't know how to do, then I'd rather not do that. Because improvement can be really hard and can be frustrating. The growth mindset, on the other hand, says that if I work at something, I can become good at it, or at least improve. Right? And I may not get the results I want initially, but I'm going to keep trying. I'm going to embrace the challenge, embrace the process. I understand that feedback and criticism are sort of the ingredients to my improvement, and I need those in order to improve. And someone with a growth mindset enjoys doing things they don't know how to do. They enjoy being beginners. They enjoy being bad at something because they know that they will improve with the right attitude over time. The right attitude and the right instruction over time. So let's take a look at a goal map based on an ACTFL intermediate level speaking objective. So the objective is that a student can, we use can-do statements a lot with ACTFL. Right? I can describe my friends and family in paragraph discourse. Yes, I can. No, I can't. No, I can't. I'm not there yet. I need to keep working to improve. Okay, so I can describe my friends and family in a paragraph discourse. Well, the growth mindset would say, let's break this objective down into manageable pieces. Now, in terms of language theory, this would trend more towards the cognitive theory, right? So there's some actions that I can do. I can attend class prepared. I can actively participate in class, and I can dedicate time outside of class to working on this skill. We can further define those actions into sub-actions, such as I'm going to complete my homework and do the readings and take do practice tasks. I'm going to take notes, right? I'm going to be actively engaged in what I'm doing and study those notes, right? And that taking notes is preparing for class and being active in class. If I don't understand something, I'll ask a question. I'll use Spanish or whatever language as much as possible when I'm doing partner and group work, all right? And then I'll continue to do those things. I can watch movies, TV series, and use extra resources such as tutors outside of class. So I can kind of conceptualize step-by-step actions that I can take that are going to help me achieve the objective. And that promotes growth. So this is actually something that I would go as far as to say in class to demonstrate this, to illustrate this with students, to walk them through this exercise towards the beginning of your class when you first meet for the first time, and say, let's talk about language learning and how you can get better at language. Sort of let's instill this growth mindset into the students from day one, and get them all thinking on the same page. One thing I stress a lot is just consistent, steady improvement. So it's my job to present everything to them in sort of like the I+1 zone. But I can also encourage them at a cognitive level to just work on improving, to work on becoming better at Spanish a little bit at a time, or whatever language you're teaching, a little bit at a time. And of course, I can give them this sort of breakdown, this goal map, to help them visualize and conceptualize how they can do those things. That's a different type of map from just the typical, I want to get an A in this class, right? So I'm just going to study hard for the test, memorize the vocab words, do the mechanical exercises, the fill in the blanks. That's going to help me get high grades on my homework, and then I'm going to get an A. That's really not language acquisition. That's almost more of like just a domain of the whole process. We might say that's sort of being really high in grammatical competence, but the result is that time is finite. So students only have so much time. If they skew too far towards getting grammatically competent as their goal, then they're not using their time wisely to get proficient at being able to use the language, right? They don't have that level of skill to be able to spontaneously use the language in a real setting, which is what we want our students to be able to do. Grammatical competence is important, but it can't be the one and only end-all, be-all goal. So how we structure our classes is really influences what and how our students learn. So the idea that we want our students to grow sort of steadily is going to lead them to have more exponential growth over time. Right? Steady improvements consistently yield consistently higher results over time. And this is really important, again, as you start to craft your classroom culture, building it around the idea of exponential growth, around I+1, around steady improvement, around the growth mindset. All these things contribute to a positive classroom culture where everyone understands that they're there to get better, not just to get a grade, not just to get a credit, but to improve in something. And that improvement, when you structure your class so that students can see, and sometimes you have to point it out to them, but when students see that they are improving, that helps increase their motivation. Think about anything you do in your life. When you get better at it, it's more fun and you want to continue improving. So you have to be in the right mindset to really stick with it and improve over time. One of the things that I do, a tangible exercise I do with my students, is a course orientation. This is where I would do it on the first day of class, definitely the first week, and I would do it in English. I would explain the main course objectives. You may skip level 2 if you're teaching in a 9 through 12 situation, because I don't think students are really going to care about ACTFL standards. It's something in higher education we can kind of bring in and show, hey, we're teaching towards national standards. You can do that in the K through 12 or the 9 through 12 setting, maybe without being so direct and saying that, these are national standards and national standards are important. You just sort of say, hey, this is what we're going for. These are our goals. And then walk through students through a goal-setting activity. Sort of help them see how they can improve in class. And make sure you're aligning your classroom instruction with how that goal-setting activity is laying out improvement. And illustrate the growth mindset. Use examples, right, from other domains like art or music or sports. If you can connect with students through something that's interesting to them and sort of say, hey, I know that we have some swimmers in this class, and the growth mindset in swimming is, you're trying to improve your technique and your endurance steadily. You don't just jump in the pool and swim as hard as you can until you can't swim anymore and then quit. You have a baseline and you build on it from there. All right, and you refine it. That's sort of the growth mindset. Same thing with playing an instrument. So relate the growth mindset to something that students understand, something that's meaningful to them. And then have some value statements and post them in your classroom if you can. We'll talk about the value statements in a second. Knowledgeable versus knowledgeable, or knowledge-able versus knowledgeable. And this is a concept in the growth mindset that talks about how we sort of understand what we know. So let's illustrate this with a unit on the house, all right, and activities around the house. So knowledge able is more performance based. It's more proficiency based. Okay, it's being able to perform. So show me that you understand a house by drawing a blueprint of the house and labeling the rooms. That's knowledge able versus knowledgeable might be, here's a word bank and I'm going to give you some sentences and bring the word down from the word bank and put it in the right sentence. Okay, no context, no real meaning behind it. I'm just trying to see if you know what the words mean, if you know the vocabulary. That may be a step in getting to knowledge able, but it's not knowledge able in and of itself. Writing a dialogue, being able to produce with the language is knowledge able. Filling in the blanks with conjugated verbs is not knowledge able, it's knowledgeable. Okay? So what distinguishes knowledge able is, again, that ability to use, the able ability part. So jumping to value statements. All right, we value. This is something that I try to include in PowerPoints in early classes, and I want to stress it to my students. Certain values when language teaching that I think are important. And number one is mistakes. We value mistakes because that's the necessary steps in the learning process. If we're not making mistakes, we're not trying. If we're doing everything perfectly, then we're not improving. So mistakes are crucial. We have to embrace them, not fear them. And again, that kind of goes back to error correction. If you create a classroom culture where error correction is taboo, you're going to have students who are mistake averse. And you don't want that. You want them to make mistakes and then show them sort of how they can correct them, but in a positive manner, in a way that is helping them improve. Effort. Just trying. Being motivated to try is so important when you're dealing with the growth mindset and the concept of improvement. Participation. We cannot improve, we cannot get better as a class if individual students don't participate. So every individual student matters, and we learn better together. Deliberate practice. Okay, so once we sort of have honed in what we're trying to do, we need to practice it. All right, and we need to perform it and practice it consistently, because that's what's going to lead to the acquisition. All right, so we don't just show something and move on, we practice it and we recycle it. We go back and do it again. What I do on day 1 and 2 in class, we're going to be doing on day 30, day 40, right? Because we're recycling continuously. Right? That is going to lead to lasting improvement. Last and certainly not least is this idea of having a positive attitude. Okay, without the right mindset, we can't get anywhere. And this is probably the hardest thing, because you can't force a student to have a positive attitude. And I know from some of the things you've told me in class, you're dealing with students who don't have positive attitudes, and that's always going to be the case. No one has a class, except me right now with you all, who has a classroom full of students with positive attitudes. And the younger you get, especially in middle school and high school, attitude is a big deal, right? Students are dealing with hormones, they're dealing with the transition between being a child towards being an adult. It's a huge change in a person's life. So attitudes, it's hard to adjust attitudes forcefully. You've almost got to do your best to create the best environment possible and encourage them along the way to have a good attitude. But you can state it. Positive attitudes will help the class as a whole. And that's something that attitude can be controlled. Right? If someone has a bad attitude, they can conscientiously work on that. It's something within their control. I was always taught that in life and sports, there were 2 things you can control: your attitude and your effort. Most things in life we can't control. We can't control what happens to us. We can't control the students who walk through our door necessarily. We're going to get what we're going to get. But we can control our attitude and our effort. And you can embrace that and sort of impart that to your students through some values that you refer to consistently. I much would prefer this approach than having our rules are do this, 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 this. Um, but again, at the end, we all have to do the best we can with what we've got. All right, so creating a positive classroom culture is extremely important, and it's something we're going to continue talking about throughout the course. But just to give you an idea of one of my approaches, something that I've been thinking about a lot lately is the growth mindset as the bedrock to my classroom culture.